Okay, so for this part, we're going to be building a simple application using Vue, and kind of what we want that to look like. I'm going to write on this whiteboard. It is just an application to display quotes and fetch a new quote each time we click a button. There's no more other. So, in the ways that I kind of talked to you earlier about how I like to organize my components, I like to build a separate folder that is not components. And do you remember what folder I'm talking about? Yeah, the views folder. So as far as views go, so this application is just going to have like a button, a display, and a header. Does it need more than one view? I mean, we could just call the view that we have, we can call it like home, right? Home.view. All right, then let's start simple. And we can just have maybe a component for, let's say, the display for the text. We'll have like a quote component. Yeah, not bad, right? Like a header. Does that sound all right? Like a header component. Cool, we want to say something at the top of the page. And then maybe a button.
Ooh.
Does that sound good? To get a new, whatchamacallit, quote?
Randomly generated quote.
Oh yeah. So I think that looks about plenty, right? We have our single view that we're going to use, and then we have three components that we're going to pass into that view. And this will allow us also to pass some props down so that they can call certain functions and whatnot, right? So, I'm going to begin with the Vue app that we created earlier. And so for this time, do not code along. Okay, we're just going to look step by step, and I'll give like pauses where you guys can catch up if you choose, or ask questions or whatnot, right? The goal is to watch what's happening and question it and try to figure out why the hell it's doing what it is doing. All right, so let's see. Now I have Smash Mouth stuck in my head. Thanks a lot.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is, actually, can y'all see that okay? Legible? You three in the back, legible? Okay, so whenever you create a Vue app, if you forget what does what, it's really cool to be able to look at like the hello world and the app.view and kind of see how things tie into each other. I'm going to leave that here for now, but we're just going to delete it. Actually, we'll just leave all of it for now. And also I want to show you that it runs, right? Because in React, what do you use to like run your application so that you can view it in the browser? npm start. That's not what you use in Vue. Does anybody know what you use? Yeah, npm run serve. Cool, and Vue always runs at 8080, which is nice because you don't ever have your node server and your React app competing. But hey, it works! Ooh, one more thing that is super helpful that I didn't mention before. If you open your dev tools, I have this nice Vue dev tools thing that is a plugin or an extension for Chrome. And this will show you like your different states within the application. All right, this has props of a message. All right, so that's super cool, and it can help you like track down where things are breaking and what props each component has. And it's just like, I'm pretty sure if you Google Vue dev tools Chrome. Yep, there it is. So I would go ahead and get that because it's really helpful for developing in Vue. And if you have been developing in React without it, you should get the React dev tools as well because they are also super helpful. Cool, but you know, we've got our elements. This is really tiny. How do I drag you down? Cool, so we got our body, we've got our div of app, right? Which is the div in our index HTML that it is being injected into. There's our little comment, built files will be auto-injected. And here we have, a nice image tag, another div that is the hello world component. Cool, it just looks like a regular web page, right? So let's go back over here. So, going from this file structure, I'm gonna make a views folder, and I'm gonna add some components. I think this is how we're going to build it, so I'm going to go ahead and build these components out. If it changes, we might have to go back and fix them, but at least we have kind of the groundwork. So I'm going to go to source, new folder, views. Within views, I'm going to make a new file called home.view. Inside of components, I'm going to make that's not how you spell quote.view. I'm also going to make header.view, and I'm going to make you don't want to call your components names that are already HTML tags either. So we'll call this, I'm going to call it API button, which is also not a good name, but we're going to run with it. API button.view. Ooh. Whatever. I was going to call it new quote button. Actually, that makes a lot of good sense too. I'm going to change it to that. Remember, it's not a big deal if your names are long, right? You want them to be descriptive. New quote button. Cool. So now we've got all our components. All right, we got header, hello world, new quote button, quote. Great. So let's start with the header. Again, what are the 3 parts of a component? Template, script, and style. Aw, yeah. I like them in this order. You can do them in whatever order you want. I am going to have those scoped here too, because I don't want those styles leaking out. Great. So, in React, when you return something in JSX, you can only return one main element, right? You have to nest everything within a div or a React fragment. View is much the same. You can only return one thing inside of your template. So if I tried to do div, save, well, my linter's already being mad. It says the template root requires exactly one element. So we need to nest things within this div, right? You could just put like an h1 there as well, but then why are you making a whole new component? So we've got a div. What should we say in there? We'll just have an h1, and then I don't know, Ron Swanson quote generator. So again, we just kind of have an h1 in here. There's not much sense in making a whole new component for it, but in the future, if you had a nav bar as well or something else, you do want to have that kind of broken out. So we're going to run with it. It's also a chance to practice importing components into other components. So we have an h1 that says Ron Swanson quote generator. We'll throw a little h1 styling here. What size should we have? Anybody? 1.5 M's. Okay, color? Red. Anything else? Is that going to be centered? Let's see. So we don't have anything in our export default statement. So your script is always going to have this export default. And what that does is that gives other things and the template and etc. Access to the things that are within that export default statement. So all of your scripts, all of your components, all of your lifecycle methods, your state, that all goes within this export default statement. We'll talk about that more when we actually have to deal with that. But just know that the only thing in your script that goes outside of your export default are your imports. Right? So everything else goes within your export default statement. But for the header, it doesn't really matter, right? We're just going to make this simple because we want to just import this into our app.view and make sure it works. So, how do we do that? Actually, we're going to import it into home. Let's do that. Template. What's next? Script. Yep. Style. And then there's the scoped option right there. Great. So now we want to import our header into our home view. It's a .view extension, but it is called a view, right? I said that the import doesn't go within the export statement. So where do you think it goes?
Right above it.
Right above it, yeah. Import. Where is it? We're going to import header from / components / header .view. So that's another kind of important distinction, is that with React, like, you don't have to add the file extension. You just say from whatever, because it's a JavaScript file. But you need to make sure you specify that it's a .view file. Cool. So that's one place. There are 3 places within this component that we're going to have to register the child component. So that's one. Number 2, components is an object. And then you just say header. So within export default, there's going to be some things that are like, most of the things are going to be key value pairs. But for instance, your state, which we'll talk about in a minute, is a function that returns an object every time. Function, or like data is a function that returns an object. Data is a function that returns an object. Talk about that more in a second. So there's 2 places. So we've registered our component, we've imported it, and now where do we need to put it to display it? Yeah, in the template. Header. Great. So hopefully this is going to work. But we still need to pass it into our app.view because, you know, we need to show it there. So delete that. We're going to pass in home. We're going to import home from it's views / home .view, and then here in components we need to do home, and that should do it. All right, those are the 3 places: in the template, an import statement, and register it in the components section of the export default statement. Here we go. Hey, there it is. It works. And if we wanted to check out our kind of DOM tree here, here's the div with the H1 in it. Great. Questions so far? What's up?
Quick question. Whenever you brought up the export default, does that come up because of your snippets, or does that just come up?
Comes up because of the snippets, and I think that was just from vtur because that would always happen before.
Okay.
And then you can. The script is normal. You don't have many choices as far as the basic outline of it. Like style, you can do Sass, you can do SCSS, you can do scoped, you can do not scoped, and it'll give you like kind of a list of autocomplete there. But for now, if y'all want to hack away at your own project for like the next 5 minutes and see if you can get to a similar spot, go for it.
Can I see the export one more time?
Yeah. From which one?
For the header.
So why didn't you export the name? Like you did an app.
You know, I honestly, I've got no clue what name does.
Okay. Console log it or comment it out in app, and would it still work?
And
App.view? See how name app?
Yep.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I agree. Like I gave this div a name now, and it doesn't show anything different in the DOM. What's up?
Because you have that build set up, would you see the changes immediately, or would it require refreshing the server?
Immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really nice.
That is
You
nice.
just you make a change, you save, you go back and you look and see what's good. So our goal is just to get a nice little header into our home view and then import that into the app. So it's basically running that import step twice, right? Good. Questions, comments, concerns? No? Yeah?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
All the component pieces are .view, yeah?
Yes.
Cool.
Good.
So,
Good. You should need. Gotcha.
yeah. So, let's see if
Whenever you get that kind of scaffolded out, give me a thumbs up. Oh, I did it again. Yeah, so that header component, there's a header tag already. I forgot about that.
Shoot.
So I'm gonna go in and fix that real quick. Rename app header.
What goes in your views folder?
Like the main page. So we're putting home.view in there. And this structure will make like a little bit more sense, especially once we get to like using router.
Yeah.
If you have questions or want to see some code, like just ask. But I'm not leaving it on the screen on purpose, so that you at least have to try. You'll need a couple more minutes. Cool.
Are there any exports on header.view?
Nope. Like I put the name in there, but again, that's completely unnecessary.
Oh, right,
That's what I mean. Graph.view. I have sending a message.
And then in home view, export header.
Everywhere I go, they had like how they wrote, I just changed it, and then it was like deleted everything. Except for the single. It's gonna show this with the message, which is in the props, you feed it in and out. This I guess, like, this is everything, so you can name what it exports as well, what it has, and then the props is just the message as a string. And then I change the text for anything else.
How y'all doing? You about ready to move forward?
I'm missing something.
What did you delete from the, or did you delete anything from the trails?
From the
Or view?
from .view, I just took hello world out of my template. I mean, go ahead and delete it from here too. And there, because we don't need that. You can leave it in yours. It's not going to hurt anything. Just get it out of the template.
Yeah, that's better. That's what I was missing.
Cool. If y'all have any questions about anything, just holler. You have been, but I just want to reaffirm. Yeah.
What are you passing into the template on the home.view?
The header.
Just in itself, it doesn't change.
Right. So like kind of what our structure is looking like right now. As far as boxes goes, is we've got app, home, that's an M, and header. Right. So you got to pass header into home and then home into app.
I like the big black arrow that comes up when you get something wrong.
Where is it?
Like on the browser,
Uh-huh.
when it fails to compile.
Oh yeah.
Big arrow.
Yeah, React gives you
The red.
the red.
Like chicken scratch.
Yeah. View one, it's a little bit more prominent. All right, let me give y'all maybe one more minute to catch up, and then move forward.
Is there anything different when creating a Vue app when you push to GitHub?
Nope.
No? Cool.
Yeah, and it generally let's see, it should auto get init for you. ls-a, yep, it auto get initted for us. So
Wow. Because we created a Vue?
when we did the view create, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Create, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, cool. Let's move forward. If you didn't quite get there, all good, right? I am gonna at the end of this push all of what we've done today up to GitHub and Slack out that link, as well as uploading the videos. I'll probably just put them on my YouTube and Slack out the links to them, but they will all be available, so don't worry. Cool. So we have a header, we have a home view. And so I think like the next most important thing would be to kind of like to show or to get the data maybe? What do you guys think? I kind of want to like get the data, right? Because we could display a quote that is not actually a quote, but you know, I guess let's make the quote display, and then what we're going to do is we're going to in-app, we're going to call the API, we're going to get the data, and we're going to set it to state, and then we're going to pass it into the quote. So first, 3 things: template, script, style, scoped. I love my style scoped. So here we're just going to do, let's do an H2. And we're going to say, this is where a quote belongs. Spoken by Patrick. Great. Don't need anything in our export default. We don't really need anything in our style. Like, it's all good. We can style it later. But let's just get it to render, right? Same process as before. We come into the view that we're importing it into. Import quote from components /quote.view. We register it in our components key quote, and then
No code along, right?
yeah, this is a no code along part. So why is this angry? Oh, again, we have to put everything inside of a div because now we're returning 2 main level elements. Div. Great. Now not so angry. Oh, I killed it.
It does take a while for the server to start running.
Yeah, it does. That's why generally you just like don't stop it and
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does take a minute to get it up and spun. Oh, refresh. Yeah, great. So we've got 2 pieces of text on the screen. That is 2 components rendering inside of our view. All right, so cool. All right, great. But now, the part that you've all been waiting for, getting the data, right? We need to write some stuff in our script. So, like React, there are also lifecycle hooks in Vue, right? For instance, when do you usually call for data in your React apps?
Say that again.
So what lifecycle hook do you use in React to call an API generally to populate your data? Yeah, Austin?
I think we've been using component did mount.
Yeah. Is it did? Yeah, it is did. Because they deprecated will mount, I think. I think it is did mount now. So there's a keyword there, mount, right? We're going to use something called mounted. That's what it is called in Vue. And if you want to learn more about the lifecycle hooks in Vue, go to the docs. There's a lot of information about it. So in our app, right now we just have our components key. We're also going to have a function called mounted. So that's kind of the general format for what you do with lifecycle methods. You could do created, mounted, updated, destroyed. I think those are most of them, but regardless. So now we just do the same thing that we always do. Like we want to write a fetch, right? Fetch. I've got the URL over here. So I want to fetch from there. And then we'll do response.json, then console log. Because I want to see it and make sure that it happens, right? So mounted is the hook. We're running our fetch within it, and then we're saying convert that into the response.json, and then console log it. So let's see what happens. Console. Boom. Turkey can never beat cow. All right, we got it. Sweet. That's awesome. So we've run a fetch, and we've got data, but we haven't saved it, right? We're just console logging it to see what it looks like. So that's where our data function comes in, which I usually like to put it up here. So what is data? It is a function that returns what? An object, yeah. Data is a function that returns an object. Data is a function that returns an object. Every single time. Always, forever. Data is a function that returns an object. Because you will run into issues if you don't do it that way. There's another syntax you can write it in, but data is the key, and its value is a function that returns an object. Right? This way is just a little bit easier. Data is a function that returns an object. Yeah, it's crazy. Data is a function that returns an object. All right, so in our object that data, the function, is returning, let's make something just called quotes. And it's going to equal, I would say null, but let's just do an empty string for now. Cool, so we have a piece of data now. And if we wanted to see this, just to make sure it's working, data, function, return an object with a key and value pair in there.
Kind of like setting state or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is like kind of our initial state for this component, or actually for the whole app because it's in our app. Yeah. Oh, is it in home? Did I do it in home? No, it's an app. We could probably do this in home. Home might be a better place for that, actually.
Because you're already importing home and then it's not as messy on the app level?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to strip that out. Good call. And put that sucker in here. Gimme. No. Yes. Okay. There we go. And then also grab this out and put it in home as well. This is just a little bit of refactoring. It's not going to really change the way our app functions, but keeping it cleaner on an app level is ideal. Great. So we got home, we got our stuff in there. Does it still work? Okay, it looks good so far. I don't see any errors. Console. Cool. Under my tutelage, you will grow from boys to men to gladiators, and from gladiators into Swansons. Beautiful. Thank you, Ron, for your wisdom. And in our view component, remember we put that data, that data function in our home component, and here we can see it. Right? It exists. It's a thing, right? It doesn't really have a value. It's an empty string, but like, fuck it, whatever. Like, that's cool. We got it in there.
What's the pencil do right next to it?
You can edit it.
Oh. That's nice to see.
Why are you throwing me an error? Maybe it doesn't like that I changed it from a string to something else. Well, I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why it's angry at me, but that's what it does. Great. So we know our fetch is working. We know that we have our new piece of data in there. But we want to set that piece of data equal to the data, right? So if I remember correctly, we want to take the thing and say this dot quotes equals resp. We're just reassigning it, right? So in React, generally you'd use set state, specifically because when you use the set state keyword, that tells the React component that the data, that state is changing, so it knows to re-render. You don't really have to do that. There's a way to force it, but I've never run into a situation where I had to force it. So let's check again. Home. Hey, there it is. When I eat, it is the food that is scared. That just kind of seems like that's always the case, doesn't it? But hey, we've got our piece of data now. So again, the steps that we took to do that, we created our data function that returns an object. And then we made a mounted call that ran that fetch and set that piece of data equal to the result of our fetch. Right? This is one scenario where you have to use this, because you have to tell it the context where it is looking for that quote. Let's see what happens if we delete that. It didn't find it, and quotes is not defined. Right? I'm sure y'all ran into this with React a bunch of times, where it's like, your function is not defined, your piece of state isn't defined, your X isn't defined. This is kind of the major time when the this keyword comes into play, is when you are setting that state. One more thing, like, we still don't know where we actually write functions, so I'm going to pull this out and set it equal, like, put it in a function that is separate from the mounted hook. So you do methods is an object, and then you just do, let's say, fetch quote is a function that just has all this stuff in it. And then we're gonna fetch quote. Now, do I need this? Is the question.
What?
In front of fetch quote.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Because when you have things, it has to do with the context of the component, right? Because fetch quote itself is in a whole different key than this mounted function, right? So like you could also probably write this like this, and it would work just fine. So it's in a different key, and so the scope of mounted does not let it access any of the other key value pairs, right? Because each one has its own individual block scope and it's scoped away. But in the context of that export default statement and the component, using this references that whole entire object and lets you go in and find the thing. That's just kind of something that Vue takes care of for you. Also, if there are any other instances of fetch quote that you had in your application, you'd want to reference it in the correct scope, right? Because if it's somewhere else as well, I have two fetch quote functions, and I call it here, but this one is looking at two fetch quote functions, and it doesn't know which one to call. It's the one that is within this component, and it is accessible through that tree. Not the best way to explain it, but like, kind of, right? Let me double check if that works.
You want to use a directive?
It does not. Can I already fetch quote of undefined? Curious. Nope, still broken. Okay, looks like you have to write it like this. Sorry, and what was the, you asked about a directive?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you use like the bind.
You can. You can absolutely do that. And we will be binding data here in a moment. And we will also be binding this function to something else. Because we want that button to update what we're seeing, right? But take a few minutes. I'm just going to put like 10 minutes on the clock, which is not a whole lot of time for your first go around with this to get it all done. But see what you can get done in 10 minutes, and then we're going to continue. And again, at the end of this, I will be uploading this entire project to GitHub and sending you a link to it. So if there are any holes that you have trouble filling, the code will be there. And instead of having this up, I'm going to throw up this. Because this isn't exactly what it... Oh, y'all don't have the... You want the API, don't you? Yeah. Is that legible? That looks really small. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to put it right about here. And this is a link. This is like what I posted earlier. This is the basic component structure that I slacked out prior to lunch. If it is hard to read. trying. It's just not quite the same syntax as React.
I'm just gonna see when page one should work.
Cool. Sorry. So what's your error?
It says app is not defined. App.view.
Ah, that's what it is right there.
That's a little weird.
No, that was good.
Just a one line?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like app and views are on the same
Oh,
level.
and then sources nested.
Yeah. So like it goes source, and then you got assets, components, views, app.view, main.js.
Okay.
It's always so confusing in there.
Okay.
It's just hard to tell. So that's all right.
Right on. And then I gotta define it somewhere.
Which one?
Oh.
Yes. So inside your export default statement, there is a thing with a key called components.
Okay.
So go ahead and make components a key. Its value is an object. Yep. And then you just type all in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it is.
So is it saying home is number line now?
Yeah.
I'm just pulling collapsing.
That looks good
Yeah,
to me.
just got a quote in there, but I have no idea what that's gonna do that in the quote.
Oh, you don't want to export home there. Just leave that alone.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to put anything in your export default statement.
Okay. And then this one would be like.
So you do have to have the same thing that we did before.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the
And that would be.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, you were right there.
Thanks.
is it your views folder actually though?
What's it?
Just right there, in the source.
Okay, cool.
Is it in the source?
What's your error?
Go ahead and close the source.
Oh,
No,
okay.
put it in the source.
I'm sure getting this up.
Let's go into your console. I see that there's one error there. Custom hello world. Okay, that's cool. So let's go to your app.view. So we still have it right here.
So I gotta take out all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Or no,
No, you leave it there.
It's just period, period.
Now we need to pass in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dot slash views
Yep.
slash home dot view.
Sweet. Yeah, there it goes.
Thanks for it.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yeah.
I, if you have the all sheet,
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a logical way to look at it.
So you're importing home integration quote. So you don't have to do that in app.view because we pulled them all into home, right?
Yeah.
And
You can just home.
Yeah, I would just pull home in there.
and home is
And
in
same
views,
components.
correct?
This is what always
Yes, okay, now go to
is
home.
tricky in that. We
Components,
just want
quote, everything's lowercase. don't have a button to generate it.
What's the tag? Is
So we just need to change that path.
Nope, you don't need that.
It would just be one
So
dot.
now this is just CSS.
It's one dot and then views, like you said.
Oh, okay. No. That's-
And then let's see how that is. There we go. Yeah.
Where did you see the quote when you were randomly generating it? Like, you were
So-
showing it
Oh, there.
here, but shouldn't it be here?
Is it inside of hook? It's inside of home, isn't it?
So right. Wow, thank you. Okay, so I have my array.
Download the view, tools.
If you just Google Chrome View DevTools, maybe even just Chrome View, put up.
You guys in here all afternoon?
Mine's
Is it-
Not all afternoon, but I be in here for another 30 minutes.
Okay,
For
because
fun.
we scheduled a meeting here.
And then it's background dash color, everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we could reschedule it somewhere else if you guys.
If you could, that would be great.
We'll
But
check on some.
yeah, if you need the space though.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I think we're just about. Colin, did you have a question? All good.
My hair is
Do you have an error anywhere? Everyone is registered but not used. Okay. In home.view? That's weird. It looks like it's being used to me.
Right?
Import header. Close. No, we could. You put a space in between the header and the closing tag. On 3. I don't think that should matter. But,
It works with the view
okay, let's go to header component.
And it's just
Established and generated. That all looks fine.
Oh, this is
Boom.
big. This is big.
Okay, so I think this is why I renamed it app header, because header is literally an HTML tag. Yeah, and I think that tag is overriding that. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep forging ahead. So let's see. So we now have. I don't know why there's a bunch of red there. Okay, cool. So we have a view, and we have two components pulled into that view. And inside that view, we're also making a fetch to get data that we're saving to state. And all these things are doing the thing, right? But now, what I want is to create, let's just say, like, does anyone remember what data type that response came back as from the API?
Is it an array?
It is an array, right? So we have an array, and we can call for more quotes if we want. So I think that this is a great time to use one of those directives. So since we have an array, let's say that I'm going to request 2 quotes. So I'm going to change this to quotes /2. So now let's double check to see that that is behaving as we expect it to. So let's go to view, and let's check home, and we've got an array of 2 quotes now.
Dude, I recently, when we first did this, I wasn't into Parks and Rec, and like since I've gotten super into it.
Nice.
I love it. I love how he's like, you can't define the Libertarian Party in terms of Democrat or Republican. Ron Swanson is such.
I just saw a gif of him throwing away vegan bacon. And he's like, oh, we have 100% meat-free bacon. And he's like, let me see that. And he takes it and he just drops it in the trash. May I have another? And the guy's like, okay. And he just takes it and drops it in the trash. And he's like, what's wrong with you? He's like, I just want to make sure that nobody has to eat this.
I'm so happy that you're all experiencing this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So now we have an array of 2, right? Length 2. So let's see if we can create 2 quote components based on that. All right. So we talked about directives earlier, and we're going to do this in the home. What directive might I use? The loopy one. V4. Cool. So let's do V4.
Whoa, right there.
Oh, thank God for autocomplete. So I also hate double quotes. So we're going to do quote in quotes. So kind of like you do with a map function, right? You have the name of the current value and the name of the data that you're looping through, right? Map, it's a little bit, you just do array.map and then the current value in the array. But it's similar. You need the current value and you need the data. So this is angry. I don't know why. Oh, same thing as React. You have to have a key bound to it. Do you remember running into that problem with React?
Unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to have a unique key in there. So we're just going to ignore that for now. It'll still run. Woo! Okay, we got 2 now. But, excuse me, they still just say, this is where a quote belongs. Quote me. And that doesn't really help us. But that's how a V4 works. So you put the V4 on the element you want to create multiples of. So that's always a question. It's like, where, I get that it's a directive, but where do you put it? You put it on the element you want to create multiples of. So in this case, I want more quote components. So I put the V4 on the quote component, or the quote tag, right? And that will create multiples of them based on how many things are in the quotes data. Are there any questions about that?
Is that kind of like a recursive loop? You just call them a function on itself? Or?
Not quite. It's not a bad question. There's not really anything recursive about it. What's happening is it's basically, when in React you would write a map, it's just doing that behind the scenes for you. So it's like, all right, so let's map over quotes, and let's create a quote component for each item in that array.
Okay.
Yeah. So then,
Is that only for V4, or is it for all the directive types that you put it on the actual element that you want to make the change to?
you always put it on the element that you want to make an active change to.
Active change.
So all of those directives are going to go on to the element that you want them to affect forever and ever. I'm trying to think if there's one
All
that
of
you
the
don't.
directives.
I'm trying to think.
Okay.
I'm thinking right now. The conditional rendering, you put it on the element you want it to affect. The V4 to create multiples, you put it on the element you want it to affect. When you bind data, whether it be the key or a prop that you want to use in the child, you put that on the element. The event handlers, you put it on the element you want it to affect. Yes, you're always going to put those directives on the element you want them to affect. Any questions about that? It'll be kind of like hammered in as we go, right?
That typically in your view file?
Yeah, so for every directive that you use, it doesn't have to be another view file. It doesn't have to be like another component that you have created. So like if we wanted to make this an H1, which can't be self-closing, hi, H1, we Gucci, right? It doesn't have to be a custom element, but it does have to just be some sort of HTML element. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Wait, oh, that's what I wanted. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to bind some data into these quotes so that we can get like some real Ron Swanson quotes in there. So we talked about some directives. What directive is appropriate here? Yeah, vbind. There is a shorthand, but I'm not going to use it. So, hold on, actually. You autocomplete this for me? Yeah. No, that's not what that looks like. I'm pretty sure it's vbind and then a colon, and then the name of the prop that we're passing down. We're going to call it quote. And we're going to say that equals quote. That looks crazy, but bind key, custom elements. No, it's still just yelling at me about the same thing. Okay, so I think that should work. So we're using this current value name here, in fact, just to make it a little bit easier to read. We're binding something called ron quote to this component, and we're using this current value as its value. That's a lot of quote and a lot of value. And try it again. We're binding a prop called ron quote to this component, and we're using this current value as the value of ron quote. So each time it creates a new element, it will take the current value and assign it to that component with the name ron quote. So to see this in action, let's come over here. We still have two quotes, so that didn't break anything. No reactive state, no reactive state. That's okay. We didn't tell it to expect any props. So just like when you were registering a component, there's multiple places you need to tell it that that's happening, right? You have to import it, then you have to declare it in the components, and then you can use it in the template. Same with props. You can bind it, but then you have to go into that element and tell it to expect that thing. Did I say inspect? Expect. Expect that thing.
Is that like passing it down? Or?
Mm-hmm. That's passing it down, but it's also telling the child, like, hey, get ready, you're going to get a thing called this. And so the syntax for that, we're going to do that in here. It's just props. And there's a couple ways to do it. This is the easiest way. Props is an array, and it just takes strings. So even if this breaks, we will still have a prop called ron quote in this component, but it just won't have a value. So there we go. Boom, boom. They've both got their own props that have been passed down. However, if we took away this, it still is going to have that prop there, but it is just going to be undefined because we actually didn't pass anything down. So when you set that prop in the component, you're like, yo, get ready, there's this thing that's coming, go ahead and create a place for it. And it's like, cool, I'm going to make a place for this prop called ron quote, and if you don't give me anything, it's just going to be undefined. No big deal, right? So let's put that back in there. I'm going to go ahead and bind a key to this as well because I hate red. Also, you can do this. What? I hate these arrow keys. So you can have access to the iterator as well. Key equals ron plus I. That doesn't seem like it's going to work. There we go. So we're giving it this key as well so that it stops yelling at me. But you can do this so you have access to the current value and what the iterator is. Right? Same as in a for loop and in a map. You always can have access to that, which helps with keys. So cool. There's our key, ron 0, ron 1, hurrah. We've got ron quotes, but now how do we use them? Because we've got them in there, but like they're not doing anything yet, right? So let's go into quote. And I believe that's it. Double curlies. Boom. Okay. Questions. And then we're going to spend probably the rest of this hour just like I'll help y'all work through this, and then I'll push everything to GitHub. I'm going to stop the recording after we finish questions now, and then I don't know, I'd say we'll be done around 3-ish officially, and you can stick around if you want to work on it more. But does anybody have any questions about? Oops. Yes, D.
Yeah, can you just go over the like key finding that last part where you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use the same directive we do to bind other props, right? We use vbind and then colon, but it has to have the specific name key. And what this is for is so that when you're creating multiples of the same thing, and if you have a change in props or something like that, it has to know uniquely which one is which. So it just has to do with the render and the update specifically. I think it's more the update than anything else. So what I did there, since in our v4 we do have access to both the current value and the iterator, if you declare it, I use that iterator and I just gave it like a name, Ron, as well, because just the iterator, if you use that for every time you have a loop, then you're going to have multiple elements with the same key, which the whole idea is to have like a unique key. So a lot of times you'd use like a hash from an ID or something like that. But I did Ron plus I, which is cool because like what this is, when you have these quotes and it's like vbind colon key equals and then the quotes, you're putting JavaScript into those quotes, which is why I had to put some more quotes and then a plus and then the I. Do you have more questions on that?
No, that was good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Comments, concerns? We didn't quite get to the button today, but we can do that tomorrow morning. The plan tomorrow morning, actually I'm going to stop this, but the plan tomorrow morning is basically to start from where we are right now and kind of grind through this, and then like once we have the app built, start a new one, and we'll be using Router for that. Which if you used React Router, thank you, it's not that much of a stretch at all. You should be able to do that pretty easily. And then also tomorrow afternoon, I won't be available for like a few hours. Maybe after 3 o'clock I will be available if you have questions. But we'll focus on the morning tomorrow. Cool? All right.